this is the first slate this year where you actually have to make some real decisions. Now, Godwin being out, does it open some things up? Like, do we consider Sterling Shepard? Sure, but he's still Sterling Shepard. Rashad White's price is up. Rico Dowdle is still cheap, but he's not $4,300. You're going to have to make some decisions. So yeah, a guy in Olave with a $5,100 price point and a 31% target share, it doesn't really matter who he's facing on a slate like this. He's going to have ownership because he's just cheap and he has a 30+% target share. I understand he hasn't been great, Greg. He hasn't had a big game, but if you're telling me, all right, do you want the $5,100 guy who's overpriced with a 14% target share, or just take Olave with a monster workload? It's just natural that you're going to get to a guy like that. You don't have to, but it makes sense that he's popular.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just volume. He's 54 targets through 5 games this year. He's averaging right around 11 targets per game. He's had double-digit targets in all but one game. And the other thing, too, this Saints team is so terrible. They're almost always in pass-friendly game scripts. The only win, not only the only win, but I think, they also had the 49ers game. They lost by less than a touchdown. So they beat the Giants last week. Every other game, though, they've lost by a touchdown or more outside of the game against the Giants where they won in the game against the 49ers. These other games, they're losing by like 7 to 20 points, and they're just constantly having to throw the football. And Spencer Rattler is clearly keyed on Chris Olave. 11 targets against the Giants, 14 targets against the Seahawks, 10 targets against the 49ers, 13 targets against the Cardinals. He gets a lot of looks. And even though, to your point, he's been incredibly terrible from an efficiency standpoint, he still has these games where it's like 10 catches for 57 yards. At his price point and on a slate where we're lacking in value, he's one of the better value options just because we don't have somebody who's like a Rico Dowdle at 4,300.
Exactly. And look, man, I understand the cap or the salary floor on running backs is $1,000 higher than it is on wide receivers, $1,500 than it is on tight ends. But also the reason for that is if 2 wide receivers are ruled out for a team and now you're playing the 3K receiver, he's usually 3K because he's not very good and it's still not guaranteed to get a big workload, right? Like, you still have to create separation and all of that stuff. You still have to understand how to run routes, to catch a ball. You still have to get targeted, whereas you could just spread the ball out if you're, say, a Baker Mayfield, if he was without a Ibuka too. However, at running back, $4,300 Dowdle with no Chuba Hubbard, it's like, oh, wait, first of all, the guy's not bad at all. And he's a bell cow back now. So, of course, they're going to be more expensive. A $4,300, I would even argue a $5,000 running back taking over for an injured starter when there's no timeshare now with the backup is more valuable than almost any 3K wide receiver who gets work because of injuries in the passing game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And there's a couple of other guys who are kind of in that same vein right now as well, in a similar price point, where you've got Jalen Waddle in what should be a good passing game script against the Chargers. He's somebody who is likely going to be seeing extra targets in the absence of Tyreek Hill. So you got Jalen Waddle also, who has not been uber efficient this year, but he is coming off a game last week without Tyreek Hill where he was targeted 9 times. He caught 6 of them for 110 yards. So that was actually a fairly efficient game. But overall for the season, he's not been very efficient. But if we're now going to be getting 8, 9, 10, 11 targets per game from Jalen Waddle, he's going to look really good at $6,100. Another one, Ted McMillan at $6K against the Dallas Cowboys. I know their pass defense last week was sort of their first good defensive game, but at the same time, too, all the Jets chalk got there just because of garbage time. But outside of that, the Cowboys just gotten killed in the air throughout the season. And Ted McMillan is another guy who has not been very efficient this year. Bryce Young has been wildly inconsistent, but McMillan is drawing a lot of volume. His targets so far this year, 9, 10, 8, 8, 8 targets through the first 5 games of the season. Hasn't been efficient, but if he's going to continue to get 8 to 10 targets per game and he's going up against a bad pass defense like the Dallas Cowboys, I think in a lot of ways, these 3 guys who are all showing up in the Sims in the mid-range are kind of similar.
Yeah, I Could not agree more. And Dallas is terrible in coverage. I bet the Panthers at plus 3.5. Not saying it's a win, but I think it's the right bet. It's looking like that's moving to 3 in a lot of spots. They're like minus 120, minus 125 on 3.5 in some books. So, I don't like the Panthers as a team, but there are weeks. I actually, I'll give you a little bit of a teaser here. May have had a Bryce Young lineup in this perfect lineup video that Josh and I do every Friday. And the whole rationale behind this, dude, is just, okay, people get way too caught up in like, I could never play that stack. This guy stinks. Say, yeah, but also on a slate where pricing is tighter, you don't need 30 from Bryce Young at 48 or 4,700, right? Like you still have to make decisions and make sacrifices in some spots. So if that means that I could skinny stack Bryce Young and Teteroa McMillan, and I can do that at a total cost of like, what, 10,800, you could still get an 18 spot from Bryce if McMillan has a good game. And you're able to jam in like Nakua, Josh Jacobs, probably Ibuka as well. You can jam all of these players in. You can run it back with Javonte Williams, with Miles Sanders looking like he's going to be out again. I'm not sure that matters, but it just helps him with an even clearer path. These are the type of weeks where I would actually advocate taking some shots on some of these cheaper quarterbacks and cheaper stacks, because as we've seen many times in the past, that cheap stack doesn't need to go insane